Wow. It blows my mind that during the opening of this game, while it's raining, you can literally see the rain falling on screen. In 1991. If you're inside while it's raining, the sound of the rainfall gets quieter. It sounds like how it would when it's raining hard outside and you're listening to it happen from the inside. In 1991. When you step in water, it makes splashy sounds, and moving through tall grass will make a sound when normal ground won't. In 1991. Enemies, pots, other items, and interactables don't just immediately respawn when they get off your screen or when you go into another room. In 1991, if you enter a room that's dark, you can use your lantern to temporarily light torches in order to make the entire room visible again. The amount of torches you light will determine how bright the room will be. And if you go into a connected room, the game will keep track of it, the new room will stay the same brightness, and eventually grow dark when those old torches go out. In 1991, there's so much world and many dungeons, yet the game's performance is reasonably consistent and it runs fine. In 1991, the localization is not gibberish. In 1991, you can see the shadows of tree canopy. In 1991, sword lasers. You can shoot sword lasers in 1990. Actually, that one kind of makes sense. It's pretty extra and sounds like something 90s cool they'd come up with back then. Link can get a blue tunic and he's got pink hair in 1991. Hello, welcome to H7 Bus. My name is Nathaniel Welch and this is Video Game Previewer. In this video, we'll be talking about The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which I played on the SNES Classic. I seriously love the SNES Classic. I love getting to play its old games on something resembling the original hardware with an original controller. It's seriously cool, and it's made for HD TVs as it's only got an HDMI out, but it's got little customizations you can make to the display of the games. Things like border decorations if you'd rather not look at empty black bars, the ability to play games in an 8:7 aspect ratio rather than a 4:3 or the use of a CRT filter. And that's something I'm a huge fan of. Even if the filter isn't perfect, I wouldn't know. All old SNES games were made with a CRT TV in mind, so having something that can get the look of the picture even close to resembling how it was originally designed while still being easily recordable on a modern television is just amazing to me. If you have an SNES Classic, I think it's the best way to play the 21 SNES games in its library, unless you've still got a setup you're running from the early 90s. You probably can't get a Classic for a reasonable price anymore, so if you're wanting to play A Link to the Past, the easiest way now is through Nintendo Switch Online. Both its SNES and GBA versions are on there, but if you don't have a Switch, it was available on the Wii, Wii U, and new Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console, and if you never picked it up on one of those, then you're going to be stuck looking for an authentic GBA card of the game. You've got to find a way to play it eventually, because it's an incredible game. It holds up extremely well, and I still find it to be tons of fun, even though it's a Zelda I used to play a lot in my past. You see what I did there? So, why is it called A Link to the Past? Well, it's because it was created to be a prequel to the first two Zeldas, before Hyrule became bunches of ruins. Ocarina of Time was actually originally made as a prequel to this game as well, and Link's Awakening was its direct sequel, so we had a nice little 5-game timeline going on. When Majora's Mask came out, it didn't affect any lore as OOT sequel because it didn't take place in Hyrule. And like Link's Awakening, Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages didn't take place in Hyrule either, so we had a tight little 8-game timeline featuring only 3 different links, all centered around A Link to the Past. Then, the GameCube came out, and we all got confused. I still am. But A Link to the Past got its name because it takes place in the past of Zelda 1 and Zelda 2's Hyrule. Long ago, in the Kingdom of Hyrule, many sought to enter a hidden golden land, said to hold an omniscient power. Those that did never returned, so when evil began to flow from it, 7 wise sages sealed the gate to the land of the golden power for all time. But now, as history has passed into legend, an evil wizard named Aghanim has come to Hyrule and killed its king. He seeks to break the seal to the Golden Land, and for his quest to do so, has kidnapped 7 girls, each a descendant of one of the old sages. The game starts with you, Link, being awoken by a telepathic message from a kidnapped Princess Zelda. She informs you that the other 6 girls have disappeared and that she's imprisoned within Hyrule Castle's dungeon. It's up to you to save her. Before you can get out of your bed, your uncle, armed with sword and shield, you two seemingly being the last of Hyrule's royal knights, tells you to stay put and wait for his return. Yet, he will not return. You must step into the unknown and journey to and through the Aghanim-controlled Hyrule Castle. You'll face mind-controlled soldiers and plenty of other opposition throughout your great adventure, but right now, it's up to you to help Zelda, stop Aghanim, and save Hyrule. Very cool story, methinks, especially for a non-RPG in this era. I totally recommend checking out a PDF of the game's original manual online. It's got some cool art in it, and it'll teach you how to play the game, but it also contains a bunch of extra story setup. Zelda games have always had interesting narratives that are certainly more developed than those of Mario or something. And though they may not always feature heavily throughout every game, with in many cases the majority of what's told to you being located at the beginning and end of each adventure, it's often still so enjoyable, awesome, and easy to grasp as you play it out. In this case, making the tale of A Link to the Past very memorable and coherent, even if its gameplay's existence is not there simply to facilitate its plot. Like its 2 predecessors, The Legend of Zelda receiving a 5 out of 5 and Zelda 2 receiving a 36 out of 40, both respectively from Famitsu, A Link to the Past was very successful, with gameplay more reflective of its series first rather than its direct predecessor. It originally started development as a Famicom/NES game before being moved to the upcoming Super consoles instead. It could have ended up a totally different game, but vision changes and shifts over the course of any long-term project, which ALTTP was. It had budget and plenty of development time, and a higher memory cartridge than normal for the SNES. Throw in some clever optimization techniques, and we ended up with one of the greatest games ever. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past released in Japan on November 21st, 1991. It was scored as a 39 out of 40 by Famitsu Magazine and a 35 out of 40 by EGM. Its Game Boy Advance version, which also contains the multiplayer Zelda game 4 Swords, was released on December 2nd, 2002, and is a 95 out of 100 on Metacritic. Both versions are one of the best-selling games for their respective consoles, and not only did A Link to the Past do well for itself on Game of the Year lists, but it's since ranked very well on many lists about the greatest games of all time. It's a gem, that's for sure. I first played A Link to the Past on the GBA. I seriously don't know that I ever got super far, like, I couldn't have at all. But I know I at least played through the beginning castle sequence more times than I can count. I loved it. I thought it looked and sounded awesome, and I found its aesthetic differences from the Minish Cap interesting. It was hard for me as a tot though, probably because I lacked the patience for such a game at the time, yet I never got frustrated or had a bad time playing. I certainly got bored after a while and moved to playing another GBA game for 15 minutes before again looking for something else, but I seriously have fond memories of ALTTP's opening. It was more my brother's game, as was the Minish Cap and Metroid Fusion. Or at least I thought it was. He has beat those other 2 many times. We had it on the Wii U's Virtual Console, and I'm sure I probably forgot about it again after playing through the intro multiple times, because I didn't really get to wanting to actually experience A Link to the Past until I got my SNES Classic. And man, playing the game was and is a blast. I probably made it halfway through 3 or so times, each time, weirdly enough, eventually getting busy and not coming back to the game for a while. I decided I wanted to play it for the show, so this was my first time finally beating the game. though I'm much more familiar with it than I used to be given the many speedrun and randomizer runs I've watched. But there's no beating the charm found in playing through the game normally in its original form. I had an awesome time, and I totally get firsthand why it's lauded so much. My gosh, this game is good. It looks great and sounds great. It's so cool that a game from 1991 is still so visually appealing. I absolutely love the look of SNES sprite work, with this game being one of my favorite examples alongside Mega Man X, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy III, Chrono Trigger, and Donkey Kong Country. I love how they look. You've heard it here first. I fully plan on one day getting a team together and making a video game, and we're gonna make it look like an SNES game, CRT filter and all. There's a very well-defined style with ALTTP's world, and it's got this consistency between the look of areas and dungeons that makes the world feel connected rather than it feeling repetitive. Because, yeah, while it may be a small world with not a huge abundance in the variety of tile sets used, everywhere is actually memorable. Without looking at the still very cool world map, you can quite easily tell where you are if you've been there before. And enemies are distinct too. They're designed in such a way that makes it so you don't have to decipher whether or not you're fighting an evolution of a previous opponent or a new foe altogether. A similar sentiment could be said about the look of the stronger versions of your items. Obviously you know what they do, and many of them give you new options rather than just increased ability, while they look just as cool or cooler than they did before. It's obviously nothing compared to the brightness of Zelda games made in the toon art style, whether made with pixels or polygons, but I appreciate all the color in this game. It's not overly cheery, but it's nice to have some really red items, green grass, sparkly effects, gleaming ice, and pink hair to enjoy and look at. Also, areas that are meant to look and be depressing successfully convey that without looking too drab, dreary, or colorless. Characters and environments are very good and super detailed as well. I like how shading is at times used to add texture and scale to the ground without extra grass or an obstacle or something actually being there. And Link's sprite in this game is definitely my favorite 2D look for him, with the expressiveness and conveyance of the animations he and other creatures double feature being excellent. Speaking of excellent, the best SNES games seem to also have the best music, and you can't talk about the games without mentioning the tunes they rock. A Link to the Past music is tight. 3 of my favorite tracks are those played in Hyrule Castle, Kakariko Village, and the Dark Mountain Forest. I totally dig the sound of old Super Nintendo music, though I do sometimes find myself wanting for more clarity in the music. This is because most SNES music was made with lo-fi, meaning low fidelity samples, while NES music was often synthesized, so though it didn't have the potential to be near as layered, NES music will certainly never lack in crispness. That being said, you've got much more complexity going on with the SNES because it's got more channels, so that generation jump resulted in not only more realistic sounding audio, but more full arrangements in general. You'll also notice less sound effect takeover with the SNES. Sometimes with both consoles, in order for a sound effect to play, it needs to take the place of a part of the music due to the limited number of channels. Though SNES music and games are often more complicated than that on the NES, the increase in channels also means increase in optimization opportunities to make any track takeover less noticeable. All that to say, I still like A Link to the Past music and SNES sample sounds no matter what. I think in my experience as well that even if the number of songs are limited, Nintendo does a good job at ensuring that none of the music in their games gets annoying. Here in ALTTP, you're going to hear some songs like the Overworld theme over and over again, but I bet you won't get tired of it. It will just faithfully accompany you on your adventure. Also, it's great. And most of the music featured here in A Link to the Past went on to stay with the franchise till nowadays, and many of the motifs are at least still used. I doubt anyone will be surprised when they completely come back again. The sound effects and mixing here are good too, but gosh, the low health sound is annoying. That's the point, by the way. I do feel a little weird not hearing Link's voice while playing though. Link's never had a full-on, let me yap out some dialogue voice actor in any of his Nintendo-developed games, but he grunts while he fights and stuff. They put one of his shouts from Ocarina of Time into the GBA version for when he swings his sword. I'm still not used to not hearing it when playing the SNES version. It's chill though. Pixels and chiptunes don't age, only mechanics, and these ones are still good. Combat is not too hard. There is some difficulty, but it is a skill that can be mastered. Link's movement and speed is at a good pace and is easy to control. Swapping between items is simple, the HUD is practical and readable, your shield will automatically block projectiles. Your tools are easy to manage and are definitely fun to experiment with. The map is a welcome addition to this game. Outside of the manual, there wasn't one present in the first Zelda. It's accurate and detailed, and it gives you a pretty good idea of how and where areas connect, as well as where they elevate. You know this is a Zelda game, not just because it's awesome, but because the world does not feel too large. It's perfectly crafted, being just the right size, so you're constantly encountering enemies, secrets, or NPCs. And because of its size, you're able to wrap your head around it easily. Exploring and looking around is fun. It doesn't take too long to get from one place to another, which keeps dying from being frustrating, and you can quickly begin to memorize and become comfortably familiar with the world. It's a treat to play this game. Hyrule and its dungeons and secret chambers are all well designed, and you get a real sense of achievement when you solve any of the many puzzles scattered about. Nothing will slow you down for too long, and sometimes you won't be halted at all, but this by all means is not a game you can mindlessly fight through. That part of your gaming skill, your mind, is always being called upon here, even if it's for simple things. Some of the game's dungeons have optional rooms, or multiple ways you can progress through them. I really like that. It's all about where you want to go and what makes sense to you. And while I recommend getting each dungeon's big item, there are a few you could straight up bypass if you wanted to. Although if it's your first playthrough, you wouldn't immediately know where without a guide. Obviously, we all have different ideas of fun, and we all have different amounts of time we can afford to devote to video games, but I would totally recommend against playing the game with a guide, beyond anything found in the original manual. Part of that is simply because I personally don't like using guides when playing games, especially during a first playthrough. If I've beat the game before and I'm struggling to get or find something I've heard of, I'll maybe consider it, but if I'm still having fun, I like the journey and finding stuff on my own. It feels so rewarding to solve and discover stuff in this game. Playing it with a guide would result in a totally different experience. The world is not too large, and the number of NPCs is not too many. There isn't an overabundance of items to collect and secrets to discover. Still, if you ever get overwhelmed, it's not hard with this game to reset and decide how you want to start tackling what's next. The difficulty is just right. Maybe a little hard for some people, either young or new to gaming, or simply uncomfortable with this game style, but I still think they'd find it fun to play. Like mentioned earlier, I found it hard when I was younger, but I still found it fun. Why? Because the challenge felt reasonable and tackleable. It felt like the game was really just asking me to grow and improve. It wasn't unfairly designed or anything, so the healthy amount of stretching progressing demanded was kept enjoyable through the many scraped knees. It stays that way, as you can totally feel the character progression in the game, which should always, and I mean always, be a given. Often, when you're constantly progressing in the game, besides the mechanics growing more intricate, difficulty, or at least your sense of it, does not change very much. However, with this game, you regularly get the opportunity to fight bad guys you've already fought many times before. And when you have a new weapon to strike them down with much easier than earlier, it feels great. New enemies aren't always harder than the old ones either. Sometimes they are, but others, while different, may have just as little health as the earlier ones, and they might hit harder or maybe not. As you progress, you'll get the opportunity to earn heart pieces that add to Link's life bar, and since it's fun to collect hearts, when your life bar gets bigger, it does compensate for harder hitting enemies. It helps you get more confident and comfortable, because the amount of hits you can take grows more than the enemy damage does, keeping extra searching for heart pieces rewarding. You feel Link's progression in his items too, as they not only look different, but work better than before. You constantly feel like Link is improving, as well as yourself, and that makes it easy to keep playing. It's impressive how consistently the level of difficulty is maintained throughout the game, because it's a fairly long game. for the time at least. It's obviously not near as long as any JRPG or 3D Zelda, but it's longer than you'd expect once you get into it. Yet, like its fellow SNES games, Super Metroid, Mega Man X, and Super Mario World, it's super replayable, and it always feels approachable. You may feel that there's a slight difficulty spike after the first 3 dungeons while starting to tackle the next 7. So, if that happens, just slow down, explore, experiment, learn to not let death upset you, and you should be able to catch back up. Even though the game doesn't handhold you much at all, but you'll probably never get that lost. You'll go off the beaten path anyway because exploring is so fun. And if you really do get stuck, you can pay a fortune teller NPC and they'll help you out. That's fine, especially since rupees are so very abundant. I never felt stressed about needing to or wanting to use them. Buy that item, do a dungeon, and you've got plenty again. Yeah, go ahead and use your bombs, because if you run out, you can go break some stuff and you'll have money to buy more again. You'll notice pretty quickly that some bosses and enemies only have one way to defeat them, or at least one major weakness that isn't difficult to discover or remember. There are a few handfuls of items and a good bit of enemy variety in the game, enough for the already interesting game to keep you on your toes, as well as inform you of and reward you for your progress. That being said, many enemies can be defeated multiple ways. You can decide what your favorite secondary weapon is and use it often. I'm personally a boomerang fan. The sword is of course Link's primary weapon, and I'd mainly use it anyway even if it wasn't because swords are cool. But the sword/boomerang combo is awesome! You can stun your opponent and go in for the attack, or set up a way for them to get hit when you're both on the move while the boomerang returns. The bow, which will for sure see a lot of use, and other items are cool as well. Bosses are super well designed, which I love. Boss fights are one of my favorite things in video games, so when they're at least somewhat meaningful to the story, challenging, yet learnable and fair, and make good use of the game's core mechanics rather than be built around a one-off gimmick, I'm happy. That's why Monster Hunter is so great. It's just boss fights. Here in ALTTP, they're done great. They're always utilizing your recent new items or teaching you something about one of your weapons. And you might think that sounds like a gimmick, but you use your items regularly. So being taught how to use one through leaving the frying pan and entering into the fire is just a fun way of tutorializing the player. During these fights, you're still required to move, dodge, and problem solve, and your sword often comes into play. They're fun, and they aren't just hit 3 times and you're done platformer bosses. Each one is interesting. Though, I did actually expect the final boss to be harder. His dungeon was tricky, still honestly super fun, and his boss fight was great, epic, and exciting. I just expected it to be tougher, you know? The game can be tough, but in a good mood is exciting to take on. I'm not gonna pretend that there weren't moments in The Link to the Past where enemy placement frustrated me, or where I wasn't occasionally frustrated by obstacle placement in one of the last 2 dungeons. But enemy placement is generally not unfair, and certainly never imposingly difficult. And the last 2 dungeons of the game are allowed to be hard. The game is not flawless, yet when trying to examine it through a critical or objective lens, and of course when looking through a biased one, it seems pretty close to flawless. It's paced and balanced really well. Something I've yet to mention is how I like the simplicity of the game's magic system. Not to say I don't like complicated RPG elements or magic use in games, but it was good not adding a bunch of spells here, which Zelda has actually yet to ever do. I would totally love an action RPG or turn-based party RPG Zelda, by the way. Going with the action RPG idea, instead of just giving Link rupees for defeating enemies, he could earn XP and eventually level up. If it was 2D, then maybe gameplay-wise it could be a mix of classic top-down Zelda with something like Secret of Mana. Or if we're talking 3D, then maybe grab some inspiration from Dark Souls and action RPG Final Fantasy, while still keeping Z targeting in the types of encounter design we're used to from both traditional 3D and open-air Zelda. And while we're at it, no matter the style of RPG, as it's a Zelda game, let's have a serious and seriously awesome story like always. But what if you could actually play through the plot, making it impactful and memorable instead of experiencing it in a flashback? I think I'm onto something here. A Link to the Past's writing is pretty good. It's awesome how supportive of you a lot of the characters are in the game. I dig that. It's genuinely refreshing and encouraging. Your guiding NPCs are pretty helpful too, while the evil ones are evil. Seriously though, ALTTP script received some noun changes when released on the GBA to better align with what stuff had been being called in the Zelda franchise at the time, but everything is still plenty understandable on the SNES. You may be wondering why I'm focusing, and do focus, so much on the idea of localization though. You see, NES and SNES games were made on cartridges, which means fast load times but less than ideal storage capacity. Games could only be so big, so before and sometimes during development, you'd have to decide how big of a cartridge a game was going to be put onto, and those with higher memory are also at a higher cost to manufacture, which means you hike the price of your game or make less per sale. So every available byte was used wisely, and text was often something that had to be reduced in order to ensure a whole game could fit on a cartridge. This means that many games had their stories streamlined or reduced to bullet points at times, in order for it all to fit. And such is the nature of game development. Your scale shifts and stretches or shrinks to fit around the game and story you have the resources to create. That's normal, that's how it is, but I wonder what games like Final Fantasy IV's story would be like if it didn't have to be reduced to 25% of its original size. But great games are great games, though you may not think so in English. That's because it can take twice as many characters in English to fully communicate a thought that used half as many in Japanese. So, localizing games with limited storage is really hard when a script has to go through an entire upheaval just to have it in English on a cart. And many games had good or fine localizations. People figured out how to simplify and communicate ideas with the restrictions they had on them. But sometimes they ended up weird. Like how in the English version of Secret of Mana, most everyone talks with a little bit of attitude. I've said all that to say that A Link to the Past's characters are not one note. There are nice ones, mean ones, chill ones, and weird ones. Nintendo did a great job bringing it to the US, and they just made a super cool game with a great story in general. The manual is great, and I really like the prologue that plays if you sit on the title screen for a while. Its opening is super engrossing as well. It's so memorable, with the rain and your uncle, bumping into guards and discovering the castle for the first time. The way the story revolves around you as you play through it is just awesome, though the game doesn't tell you how to play it. That's what the manual is for. It's easy to figure out without any help, and all-out experimenting as you first move through the opening is very fun. Game's a great player experience all around. Alright, let's see if I can do this. So, Link to the Past, very popular, very famous game, right? Has this sort of iconic story slash secret slash glitch associated with it. I'm going to see if I can trigger it for myself. Now, I don't know all the logistics behind it, but I know that there are multiple methods to make it work. This is the first one I saw. You could say there's a method to the madness, but this doesn't seem very mad. I saw this and thought, hey, that looks pretty easy. I'm going to try that because I want to see. Oh, it might not work now. Well, you know, let's just see at this point. I want to see what happens. Okay, it worked. You may be looking, having played this game before, like the first 5 minutes of it, and you're thinking, that hole does not lead here. What the heck is going on? Why is this room filled with rupees? Well, as far as I understand, this is a room that the game is programmed to send you to in order to like stop you from glitching out or whatever. And so instead of the game glitching out, it'll send you here, and you can leave this room and it'll spawn you in front of Link's house, and you can go back to wherever you were. But there's this little thing here, and you might be thinking, well, what is this little thing on the wall? Well, it's called like a telepathy stone or something. Anyway, there's this old man in the game who, if you get stuck in dungeons, you can hit these, interact with these, and he'll talk to you. But the message in the stone is not from that old man. Look here, it says, my name is Chris Houlihan. This is my top secret room. Keep it between us, okay? This is Chris Houlihan's top secret room. Who the heck is Chris Houlihan? That's the question, right? So, Nintendo Power magazine, was run by Nintendo of America. They're not around anymore. But anyway, you would get it back in the day, and it would be full of like reviews about Nintendo games or news, that kind of stuff, articles, interviews. But sometimes there'd be like competitions or giveaways or challenges, and you could earn something from them, right? And there was this one done way back in the day. I'll do anything to talk about Final Fantasy because I just love it. There was this one done, and the whole thing was like, if you can take a picture of the I think it's called the War Mech from Final Fantasy 1. It's basically the first Final Fantasy super boss ever. This super rare spawn in this medieval fantasy game, right? What the heck? That's a War Mech? This huge robot that can just kill the party super easily, shows up in like the second to last dungeon or something. There was this thing that, like, if you can take a picture of the War Mech and send it in, you'll have a chance to have your name put in a future Nintendo game. Pretty straightforward, right? But whenever someone won one of those things, Nintendo Power would come out and say, hey, this is who won. Congratulations. Link to the Past comes out. There's this Chris Houlihan room. It gets discovered. And it's not widespread, right? Because nobody really knows what it is or how this works or anything like that. But there's the running theory nowadays, because an article eventually did come out in a later Nintendo Power magazine or something that said that Chris Houlihan won and had his name put in A Link to the Past. But everyone's wondering, well, okay, Chris Houlihan is this guy that won a Nintendo Power thing and had his name put in A Link to the Past, but what did he win? Is it the Final Fantasy thing? Because we never saw the answer to that, right? So that's kind of the prevailing theory. The time fits, all that kind of stuff. But we don't know for sure. There's just this room in A Link to the Past. It's Chris Houlihan's top secret room. He had his name put in the game. Now we're back in Link's house. And it could be connected to the Final Fantasy War Mech. It really is just this interesting little story of how the heck did Chris win? That's cool to have your name in A Link to the Past. It's only in the US version because it was Nintendo of America through Nintendo Power. But it's just so interesting to me. Yeah. I don't know if there's too much theme to really be grasped from this game. It's not that kind of one, but it's definitely all about helping people. Do the right thing, persevere, rise to the occasion, choose the needs of the many over the needs of the few, be kind to your fellow man, and never stop learning and trying to improve. All easier said than done, but if Teenage Link can save his home from evil, then you and I can do some pretty cool stuff too. The Legend of Zelda franchise is at its core about exploration. Owning one of its games is supposed to be like having your own little static garden to see every little corner of. So I'd encourage you to get out into nature every once in a while. Grab a friend and go catch a glimpse of this beautiful earth that God created. And totally learn how to be a hero and wield a sword and boomerang and all that stuff. There's not really anything in A Link to the Past that I can objectively say is problematic. There was some stuff I thought might be, but I either eventually ended up not thinking so, or it was so minor it's not worth bringing up. It's a totally good game. Ending is sweet, classic SNES credits are nice, super good closing music, great soundtrack and presentation in general, the gameplay is stellar, and the story, though simple, is plenty interesting. The game is fun. The game is basically perfect. I give The Legend of Zelda A Link to the Past a 10 out of 10. 2 in a row. That might not ever happen again. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more video game previewers, then you should like and subscribe because there'll always be more on the way. What do you think about A Link to the Past? Let me know in the comments. God bless.